Right, I'm going straight in with a question. Rick, what's your favourite carb?
Bagels. Life without them would be unbreadable. Sarah.
I love a sweet treat. I do not know what I'd do without them.
What is happening? You've both seriously outdone yourself there with the...
that's tenuous.
Oh, yeah,
Tenuous.
that's the best
It's
one,
tenuous.
surely.
It's
Today we're going to be
tenuous.
talking about whether or not you need to carb load for those long runs, as well as taking a look at all of the news from the Paris 2024 Paralympics, and of course, answering your questions. So let's get cooking.
Hi.
Hi.
Missed you.
Didn't miss you. How have you been?
No.
What have you been up to? How's
so-
the half marathon training going?
Yeah, so Andy, we're in the woods doing this photo shoot for our new Garb.
Nothing to do with the running channel, right? Just me and you in the woods.
In the woods. And me and Andy are doing this photo shoot in the woods with hats, really nice hats, hats that were taken off me and given back to me.
The hats for the running channel for you guys to buy, anyone listening to this, are coming very soon.
This is an exclusive. I don't know we were giving this away.
Yeah.
Well, Rick's mentioned
When
it
is
now.
it? It's September they're coming. It's September 23rd.
I think that's right. So
Hey,
I mean,
look at me.
You've got
On
that right.
dates.
That's the current plan.
Yeah,
knowing
here's
us,
another
it could
date
move.
for you. Here's another date for you. October the 13th.
Which
What's
is
happening then, mate?
Don't you know?
You're running a half marathon.
Running a half marathon. Yeah. So Andy and I, it rained and we're hiding under some trees. I said to him, "Oh, mate, so I've got to do this half marathon. Want to. Kind of.
Yeah.
I said, so how should I go about it then?
Well,
Was Andy like, do you mean how do you train?
That's right.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for months, and obviously we've brought this forward a little bit. So you're going to do two. You're going to do one in October and then one in Malaga in December.
Yeah, that's right.
A double half marathon
you're very
in
happy
1
about
year.
this.
A double hot. Well, I mean, yeah, kind of. But obviously, this is about training plans. So obviously, you two have been telling me about the 10% rule, building it up. But obviously, we went away. I was in Canada. Then and the three of us were in Paris for a bit. So that all went a bit, as my gran used to say, a bit skew with.
Yeah.
Well, we've been sneaking it up on you though, because your weekly mileage has still been going up.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's,
So
and now
today,
we've kind of formalised it, haven't we?
Yeah. And do you want to know the best thing about this half marathon?
go on.
I get to run it with you.
You know what? This is because I said one sentence when we were out in a bar in Paris.
No.
And you will not stop reminding me about this one sentence that I said. And it was a throwaway line,
No,
Sarah.
it wasn't.
It was a throwaway line.
Picture the scene. We've wrapped up in Paris. We're having some drinks to celebrate a wonderful 10 days.
Oh, I've only just remembered what you're talking about.
Little Miss Diva over here decides, we're saying, Rick, it's so exciting. You're going to run this half marathon in Malaga. We might potentially have another half marathon that you can run. You'll be running along. You'll be documenting it so people can watch. Wine glass in one hand, pointing his finger with the other hand. He categorically says a number of times throughout the night, I will not hold a GoPro. So when you see Rick chaperoned around the half marathon course by me, just remember that I've run a half marathon holding a GoPro.
Yeah.
Andy's run a half marathon holding a GoPro. But Rick, that's a bit too far for him.
He did actually at that point demand that Gabby Thomas come and run with him to hold a GoPro.
Then he found out that the furthest that she runs is a mile. So that put that to an end.
Well, listen, thank you, Sarah, for holding my GoPro for me.
You're so welcome.
Well, before we find out how Sarah's week's been, I've got a question for you, Sarah.
Oh, no.
So we're based in the UK. There's a famous UK sitcom called Gavin and Stacey.
Oh, yeah.
That Sarah and I have been rewatching in anticipation of the final ever episode that's coming out later this year.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite things ever, and I love it. And I'm pretty sure we're not going to get in any trouble for copyright here, because I've got a little clip to play.
Are you going to play it?
I'm going to play you a little clip, Sarah. And the question to you is, after you've done a session,
Yeah.
and or perhaps after you've done a half marathon,
Yeah.
and you need to just keep your body moving, what do you do? Because I think Uncle Bryn's got an answer for you.
Oh, man. Great session. Woo! Oh, right, that's it. I'm done. No. You gotta warm down, buddy. Otherwise, you'll be stiff as a brick tomorrow.
Warm down.
You got to warm down, buddy. Otherwise, you're going to be stiff as a
Not
brick
cool
tomorrow.
down. Yeah.
Can't watch Gavin and Stacey anymore. They've ruined
It is a bit of a struggle, because actually when we had this debate with you, most people agreed with you, Sarah, to be fair.
I mean, you are cooling down.
Yeah.
Tell you what, though, at the weekend, I was not warming down or cooling down.
I know.
I
Did you
was
fall over again?
sweating so much.
No, Sarah
I
ran the big half.
ran the big half.
Oh yeah. You ran it with Tito, didn't you?
I did run it with Tito. Anyone who has been hotly following the Sarah versus Tito debate, you'll be pleased to know that not only did I hang back a little bit to let Tito cross the line first, he then stormed to victory and ran a phenomenal 1:41 at
Big
the big
PB
half.
for him, yeah.
140. What did you get?
I was on track for 1:43 up until kilometre 19, which you might think is very close to the end of a half marathon, but no, I completely lost it. Started walking, had a little cry, and then found some amazing people that I ran through to the finish with.
Did they kind of pick you back up again, give you that
so
little
it was
boost?
actually, it's Jules, who's a fan of the running channel and friend of the running channel. She came past and she was pacing her friend, also called Sarah, who got a PB. And they came past me, like, I think maybe like 20 and a half kilometres in.
Yeah.
And I'd
Is
seen
that how far
them.
I've got to run?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's far.
21.1,
It's
mate.
far.
Oh, gosh.
But they came past and Sarah was on track for a PB. So
Okay.
at that point I was like, yes, okay, I can help this. But yeah, just had an absolute shocker at kilometre 20. Got a 10-mile PB.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very happy with that. And then it all fell apart.
So what was your end number?
1:47,
Okay.
which is still like, I'm not complaining.
So what's
That's
that split? What's that per kilometre average?
5:05, I think.
5:05.
Yeah.
That's really fast.
Yeah.
And you
But
walked
I
a
was
bit.
aiming. Yeah, I know, which will really annoy some people. But I know other people as well who managed to get a PB on Sunday. It was so hot. And actually, shout out to Yimmy, who's also a friend of the running channel. He is,
I love Yimmy.
yeah, I think his Instagram handle's like Fat Guy Runs the Majors. And he did this incredible challenge a few years ago where he literally ran all 6 majors.
In one calendar year.
In one calendar year. And now he just goes round and he has an incredible Facebook community of like giving advice to all of them. And he wanted me to say, on behalf of runners, take on electrolytes if it's that hot. Because like the
Interesting.
amount of people that, like the medical team at Big Half at the weekend was incredible, but like the amount of runners who were like collapsed on the side of the road or like really struggling in the heat, like water sometimes isn't enough when it is that hot.
Yeah.
So just making sure that you are like either what they said on the start line that we all ignored, I felt everyone ignore it, to maybe not go for a PB because it's a bit too hot. Like if the race is
27
saying
degrees.
that, they're not saying that just because.
What are the 6 majors?
Boston, Chicago. I'm going to go through the American ones first. Boston, Chicago, New York, Berlin, London, Tokyo.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
And there's debate
Major
about the 7th.
marathons.
We actually had an email in from some people in Sydney. It's like, how can we make sure that Sydney becomes the
How can they?
7th? I mean, I'm
We
not sure I
don't
know the
know.
answer to that. we don't have
We're
the inside
not in
scoop.
charge
We don't
of
have the
that.
inside scoop on that.
But speaking of half marathons, we are going to do a kind of special podcast episode coming out soon highlighting this. But Andy, could you give a little update on how you are?
Oh, well, Sarah and I have had difficult weeks for different reasons. So Sarah, you described yours as a wobble at 20k.
Yeah.
So
Legs fine, brain not good.
Yeah, but so many runners experience this, me included.
Yeah.
We often talk about like I've, I suppose, got my own coping mechanisms to deal with it when I've had to deal with it before, when I've wanted to stop or wanted to walk, and sometimes I have walked, and you kind of sometimes you come through it, sometimes you don't, and that's normal. I want to come back at the end because you've decided on a new mantra, right?
Yeah.
So we can finish this little section with your new mantra because I love it.
Okay, great.
But yeah, update from me. Plan was, we're recording this on the Wednesday. This Sunday coming, so in 4 or 5 days' time, I should have been doing this half marathon PB attempt, my first real half marathon. So actually anything I was going to run was going to be a PB probably. And I did a workout on Sunday, so 3 days ago, that did not go well. My body has let me down. And I think that the last 4 to 6 weeks I've been with being away in Paris and summer holidays and like the stress of life and work. I think all of that has got on top of me, and I've come out of the end of that, and my body's just said no, I don't want to do it anymore. Both physically and mentally, I got a little bit ill, all of those things, and I slightly tore my calf in my workout on Sunday and had to walk it in. So I've been hobbling around the office this week, and that means no race this Sunday, which is I was really, really upset about. We've talked recently about how we both feel, or all of us feel like we're better people when we're able to run and running's going well. And this just really set me back. So it was a bit of an emotional 24 hours as I had to kind of deal with, first of all, the denial. Like I was like, I could feel my calf go and I couldn't take any more steps. So I had to stop.
Yeah.
But then even like 2 minutes later, I was like, well, it doesn't feel so bad now.
Maybe
If I jog again, then I'll get back into this and I can do my workout. And that was crazy, and that's not true. And then the next day I could barely walk. So I didn't try and jog on it. I had that sort of crazy moment of initially of all of the stages of grief, anger, denial.
And what was more annoying, Sarah, as well, is that the rest of us had to do Andy's running for him on the hat shoot.
That's true, because I came along and I was basically just a standing hat model because I couldn't do any running. I'm not a very good
so
model
when you
at that.
see that come out, it's just like,
You won't see Andy moving.
Look at all of the pictures of Andy just stood.
Static.
While the rest of us are
Static.
But hey, you've got us to pick you back up. Like I say, we will be recording that episode very soon to kind of give like a full update. So if you do have any questions, email in podcast@therunningchannel.com and me and Rick will get a good deep dive into that, because I think it's an important topic to cover. Quite often you see like on social media people are like talking about a challenge, doing it, then they go quiet, and then they come back a few weeks later to be like, oh, by the way, I'm injured, but now I'm okay. So we'll get into it.
Yes, we will talk about it, but let's finish on a positive. I saw this on Instagram, Sarah, your new mantra.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to have a different one for every race, but this is the current one I'm going with. Work hard, have fun.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that sums up that still might be impossible, but even if that's type 2 fun, I think what I struggled with at the weekend is that I have this such like fear that I asked Tito at the end, because the whole way around the race it felt like he was buzzing, and I was like, did you enjoy that? Because you were working so hard, and he was like, no, that was awful, but you fake it, and then you feel the actual like enjoyment at the end. So everyone, if you see someone looking happy in the race, chances are they're probably hating it, but you have to fake it till you make it.
Yeah, work hard, have fun. The second half of that is the only bit that Rick will subscribe to.
Me and Rick will be having so much fun. But let's get on to the topic of today, because in order to have fun and have a good race, do you need to carb load?
You do. There's so many questions on this about carb loading.
Well, it's situation specific is the answer.
Well, I suppose it comes down to the length of the race, doesn't it? And this is what I've really picked up on this. 20 miles here is kind of a key number, isn't it? But I suppose, like, what is carb loading? Carb loading essentially is consuming carbohydrates at a greater rate than you'd normally do, usually reducing protein and reducing fat at the same time, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so the reason we're talking about this now is because we're aware that we're approaching autumn marathon season. Regardless of whether you are training for a marathon or an ultra or even a half marathon to some extent, carb loading is going to become a kind of buzzword of conversation, and loads of different people do it in different ways. And I think the caveat with all of this is that it is an incredibly individual thing.
Yes.
So in the same way that when we talk about fueling within a race, we're going to talk about like practice your nutrition. That is because whatever works for you is going to work for you. It's not necessarily going to work for someone else. So this is going to be very kind of broad advice. But if you've never heard of carb loading, or if you have got a race coming up and you need to carb load, we'll cover it now.
Yeah, let's talk about the situations. I think there's a difference here between any long runs that you're doing in training versus the race.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can spend your entire life carb loading 3 days of your 7 days. So if you're doing a long run
that does sound lovely though.
I see what you mean,
Yeah, so if you were just carb loading for half a week, every week, for every long run.
But that's an interesting thing as well, because I think a lot of people, myself included, when I first started doing marathons, I only thought about carb loading the day before.
Yes.
But actually you can start that a few
2
days.
to 3 days, 48 hours to 72 hours before.
Yeah, so that the kind of the perfect ideal world recommendation has you doing 3 days before. Let's start with the marathon. So it's well documented and well researched that carb loading to some degree will help you for your marathon. And yeah, 3 days before, maybe 2 days before is that kind of sweet spot. Then there are lots of numbers that get bandied about. But bear in mind that all of the studies that those numbers are based on are usually done with elite men.
Yeah.
So there's a very different body composition there to perhaps the normal population. And also they're only running for just over 2 hours. So all of those things come into the factors of
But this is long distance running. So, most of the time this is 20 miles plus. So you don't really need to carb load if you're doing a half or a 10K or a 5K. It's just not needed.
No, race-wise, half marathon is probably on the
cusp.
The cusp of whether you might need to or not, and it possibly depends on how long you're going to be out there for. And also all of these things, it depends on like what your goal is in the run. So the lower the intensity of your run, regardless of how long it is. So if you were doing an ultra marathon, for example, to my knowledge, the the benefits of carb loading there are a bit less obvious. Even though you're going for a really long time, in an ultra you eat more regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the overall intensity that you're working at isn't close to your max. So you can get away with the kind of other energy stores and so on. And you can kind of take enough on as you go because you can eat more
But
comfortably.
then it depends on the ultra as well. If that's like if you're running flat out for 50k on the road,
Yeah.
then you probably are
Yeah, because
treating
that's
it like a
probably for
marathon.
you high intensity.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So then let's think about, we're saying for a marathon you should, and just talking about the reasoning why, is because normally your body can store a certain amount of glycogen, which is what it's going to use for kind of higher intensity exercise for energy. The muscles will break that. That glycogen breaks down into, to my knowledge, into glucose particles, which are then oxidized. That's the oxygen bit of aerobic exercise in the muscles to produce the energy.
Yeah.
So if you don't have enough glycogen, then you're going to run out of energy. And the idea here is that because we don't need to, we don't maximize how much glycogen our body could store most of the time because we just don't need it.
And that's mostly stored in your muscles, but a bit in your liver as well.
Yes, exactly. So in those 3
Science.
days, yes, in those 3 days before a big marathon race, then you can store more than you usually would. But the hard bit is that the kind of standard recommendation, I think, is 10 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. But just to break that down, if
you're 90 kilograms,
so
ish, give or take.
As an example, so if I'm around 75 kilos.
Yeah.
So I would need 750 grams of carbohydrate a day, according to those studies.
How much? 750?
Yeah. And that's a lot. So I've got some stats here, like 100 grams of rice contains 28 grams of carbohydrate.
My God, how much rice have you got to eat?
So you'd have to eat 2.5 kilograms of rice.
Well, that's not real.
No, it's not realistic. And that's the thing here is...
I'm just imagining you coming back from the supermarket.
I
probably can't even carry 2.5 kilograms of rice.
Kilograms of rice.
What's that shot where you buy in
cooking
bulk?
for the family.
So please don't...
Costco.
If I've got my exact rice stats wrong there, please don't shout at me.
But
But the
it is
idea
the
here is
same-
that it's hard to eat that amount.
Yeah, and there are loads of videos on TikTok as well of people doing it with bread, and like it becomes ridiculous, and that's why it is. I like the way of doing it that I've seen people do, where you look at your plate 3 or 4 days out. Say like you're 4 days out, and you look at your plate and you're having your kind of normal dinner, and you look at the ratio of, like, obviously not everyone's meal is like this, but say you just really simplify it down. You've got protein, you've got veg, you've got carbs on your plate, and then the next day you slightly increase that pie chart on your plate and you increase the carbs, and then you do it again. Like that is probably the simplest way to look at it.
Yeah, and having extra bits of carbs with your normal meals, but not so much that you're going to be bloated and horrible. Because also bear in mind, carb loading, for every, I can't remember the numbers, but for every portion of carbohydrate that you eat, you store a certain amount of water.
Yeah.
So every extra bit of glycogen that your body stores, it also stores water. So you will be a bit heavier, which is no problem at all because you need that for performance. But then I suppose, and my last point was going to be that you don't have to eat 2.5 kilograms of rice. You could have a sports drink, for example, with a particular formulation of carbohydrate in it, which is going to be easier for your body to absorb and doesn't mean eating kilograms and kilograms of traditional carbs.
And when you run out of glycogen, that's when you hit the wall, isn't
Yes.
it? That's when you start feeling, that 20-mile mark because you haven't got enough glycogen. I can just see the arrows now. Carbohydrates, glucose, glycogen, energy. So you run out of glycogen, you hit the wall, and that's when you need to be actually increasing your carbohydrates during the race as well.
But then that's also...
it's a bit late if you've hit the wall.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's why it's so good to get...
But if you still want to finish, what do you do?
Yeah, so then you could take it on, but then you're going to have to anticipate that, like, you are in that dip, and as soon as you take on whatever race nutrition you're having, gel, bar, chew, whatever it is, that's not going to be instantaneous. So if actually... for the half marathon that I just did, for example, within a marathon, I would take fuel on every 7k.
Okay.
In the half marathon, I took it on at 6k because I was like, I'm running a bit faster. I'm running for less amount of time. I feel like I'm working a bit harder. I'm going to anticipate it. And until 20k, but I don't think that wasn't an energy thing. That was just mental.
Yeah, but that's
Didn't
fuel.
Hit the wall at all.
But that's fuel during your half marathon. You don't
But
actually
that's what
need
I
the
mean. So then-
carbohydrates because
Because you're just
not
getting
marathon.
instant.
Yeah.
No, you might though. Like,
You might.
So the point here isn't necessarily about glycogen. So we're talking about carb loading, which is different to in-race fueling. So the idea of carb loading before a marathon is that you've maximized how much is in your body before you start, but then you're going to use some of that up exercising. So the idea of fueling in the run is that you keep those stores topped up. So if you get it right, you shouldn't hit the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But so if you've not had enough either in carb loading or in race nutrition, then at 20 miles or wherever it comes along, you'll hit the wall, and it's going to be a struggle to get that back, because it'll take a little bit of time for your body to absorb stuff if you're then eating it.
Yeah.
But I think that another question for today is, we're talking about marathons and fairly all agreed that you need to carb load. But do you need to carb load then for your longest run for your marathon training? Or in your build-up every Sunday or whatever day you do your long run, should you carb load for those runs?
Well, if the golden number here is 20 miles.
No, I think 20 miles is something. I think 90 minutes of exercise is like a number that people talk about, where if you're going beyond 90 minutes, then you're going to really start to like glycogen deplete.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a choice that you make as to whether, like, I would regularly have run a 90-minute run on a Sunday in my training.
Yeah.
And I would feel it about the last 20 minutes of that. So once I got past about an hour and 10 minutes, I could feel that I was running glycogen depleted. And I wanted to do that because I would be starting to get extra adaptations to other energy systems and stuff.
I guess that's the debate then of like doing it in training versus doing it for the race. I know people talk about as well, if they use caffeine, then lots of people kind of will use that as little as possible in training. So then you get maximum benefit when you use it on race day. So it's that toss up of, if you've never carb loaded before and you are having that kind of proper dress rehearsal long run, definitely practice it, because you never know. You might want to practice what you actually use to carb load with to check that, you haven't got an awkward toilet situation on
you
race
don't
day
feel heavy
morning.
and bloated and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's that. I think it's the point of your long run. So you need to choose on the long runs, what's the point of them? If those long runs, if you need to focus on race day practice, because we say nothing new on race day, then you need to practice roughly what you're going to do for carb loading, including the breakfast before that run if you're going to eat something.
Yeah.
If that's a long run that's really focused on performance, so it has a really high proportion of the race of the run at a race pace, for example, then carb loading and fueling during the run will help with performance. And then similarly, if you're a bit worried about how quickly you're going to recover from a long run, then having better stores of glycogen and also fueling on the run itself, that's also going to help speed up recovery. So if you're looking at any of those things, practice, performance, or recovery, then some combination of carb loading and fueling on the run could have a really big benefit. But if none of those things really matter to you, then carb loading in particular is probably going to be less important for those long runs.
How long does it take if you've not got enough carbs in your system during a run, long run, or a race to get that into your system to create that energy?
So I genuinely don't know. I'm sure that there's some studies that show this, but I think that the reason that you want to practice it at least once or a couple of times on your longest runs is that you need to get a sense for what that feeling is. So if you hit that wall once in one of your earlier long runs, then you'll be like, okay, well, I didn't get that right. So either I haven't had them soon enough, or what I'm eating isn't getting into my system and being stored effectively, or whatever it might be. So I think that's the reason for practicing and having nothing new on race day, because there's no such thing. It's not going to be like, in fact, if you and I took the same gel at the same point in terms of after a certain number of minutes or intensity of exercise, that would have a radically different effect on our bodies, because we're different people, and our metabolism and fitness and muscle mass and all of those things are going to impact how I store and then use energy.
But I suppose if I'm on a long training run, I'm not going to bring a loaf of bread with me.
No. So that is why in race nutrition, if you're on an ultra, you might be whipping out a sandwich to fuel you. If you're in a marathon and you're trying to run fast, that's when we have a whole host of different fueling options. And that is why it's so important to practice, because whether you're in your half marathon, for example, you've got options. You might have a gel, you might have a chew, you might have a bar, completely depends. And that's why it's so important to practice, because there are so many different options. In fact, I'll get you to try one after this podcast, because on my desk right now, I have one which you can eat the packaging of it, which is quite cool.
No way.
Yeah, so there's loads of different options.
The actual list of stuff, of carbs that we should be eating in the 2 to 3 days before, though, it is more than rice. So you got fruit, potatoes, starchy vegetables, steamed or boiled rice, whole grain bread, and whole grain pasta. So the list is a little bit more varied.
Yeah, and even though those are kind of a description of overall carbs that you could have, but then it's not even that clear cut about whole grains, for example, because whole grains are slower release carbohydrate, which is why they're generally better for people.
Yeah.
But then immediately in your breakfast or right before a run, for example, you might not want that. You might want something that's easier to digest and more quickly releases energy. So, I mean, I could be wrong on that, but that's why you've got to try it out. You've got to find what works for you.
Practice makes perfect. So hopefully that answers some of your questions on carb loading. Do email in podcast@therunningchannel.com if you have anything else that you would like us to answer. And now we're going to talk about some running news, followed by your questions.
So rather than a specific news story, other than the fact that the incredible Paralympic Games is happening in Paris right now, and I've been loving watching it, I was interested to see the men's T54 5,000 metres. That's a wheelchair event.
Track.
On the track, yes, T for track.
Yep.
David Weir was in this, who's now 45, which blows my mind. And so he was competing when I was competing. I've been in, we had the same physio and stuff. I don't know him that well, but we've certainly met, and he was an inspiration to me. I just think he's incredible. But the chat from the commentators and the discussion was about his chair, because I think in the last 10 years or so, for example, there's his main rivals, Marcel Hoog. Between them, they've won multiple of the major marathons. And Marcel Hoog's had, for a few years, I think, a chair made by the Sauber F1 team.
Wow.
And you could see a massive difference. And this, I guess, is the equivalent of super shoes in terms of if you don't all have the same thing, then like in cycling, there's massive innovations.
You've got a faster chair than somebody else, you've got an advantage.
Yeah, but this year, I think, was the first year that or very recently anyway, David Weir has got this incredible chair and feels like he's on the level playing field, albeit he's now 45, so that makes it more difficult. But I think the chairs themselves cost between 25 and 30k, which is pretty amazing. And then I was just enjoying watching the tactics. It's obviously, if you get boxed in a wheelchair, i.e. you're trapped on the inside lane, and
harder to get out.
It's much harder to get out than it would be if you're running.
Because is it the same like waterfall start?
Yes, it is. And then they have a certain, I guess, setting or radius that they set their wheel to when they hit the bend each time. So you see them hit their front wheel setting, and then that obviously sets perfectly, more or less, to the curvature of the track. And then they can control it slightly with each hand to make sure they're steering and so on.
Amazing.
But I just thought it's fascinating. And then the difference in times, I think it was over 2 minutes. There can be over 2 or 3 minutes difference between the heats in the qualifying and then the final, and the constant surging and stuff. It's so similar to watching running, but the pace differential is so much more extreme.
And you and I have both been watching The Last Leg, which is a television programme that's on every night during the Paralympics on Channel 4 in the UK.
Yeah.
And it's just got a brilliant take on the day's events. But there was one bit that kind of really struck out to me this week, when they talked about basically how Team GB is so well put together as a unit. We're second in the medal table for a relatively small country.
Yeah, behind China.
Behind China. Because our Paralympic setup is just so professional. It's so good. We basically propelled ahead after London 2012. And that's how we're getting all these amazing medals so far. I mean, Hannah Cockcroft, for example, she got her 4th consecutive T34 100-meter title, an 8th Paralympic gold medal.
Yeah, she's incredible.
And there's an Aussie who presents that program, and he was just like, fair play to you guys. You just nail the Paralympics. You just do it very well.
Yeah, because I think it's treating it with the same importance and weight as the Olympic athletes. So there's this full funding program for a whole bunch of different sports in the Paralympics, which is what allows people to train and be the best.
I think as well, like there's a big call out happening from para athletes to the excitement that's being shown in Paris. They're like, bring this to other things. Like I'm sure Johnny Peacock speaking about bringing it to Diamond League.
Yeah.
If you're following kind of what I forgot is that all of the athletes that competed in the Olympics are still competing. There are still different events going on. And I think it would be really nice to see more competition televised for para athletes as well.
Yeah, I agree, because they've had sellout stadiums in Paris. It's been amazing.
Great. It's been so good.
Yeah,
I'm just really jealous. I just wish we were back there.
I know, same.
Yeah.
I really want to go and watch the long jump live, because have you seen it for visually impaired athletes? They are paired up with a helper that stands on the jump point, and they literally line them up. Like, I would love to see us have a go at this, because I just think the like direction and like the
I can barely run in a straight line.
Well, this is what I mean. Like, I think it's such a skill to be able to be set up, pointed in the right direction, and then you're literally following their voice to then jump. And they're not jogging. Like,
they're going for it, right?
Jump, you have to sprint as fast as you can. Incredible.
And then next week we'll probably bring some results from the Diamond League, because there's a big showdown happening this week. One of Rick's favourite athletes.
This is Mondo.
Yeah. Mondo Duplantis, world record holder. And he's since the Olympics set another world record. He's gone up another centimetre.
He's so fast at the 100 metres, it's incredible.
And he's taking on, so he doesn't normally run the 100 metres.
But he's very fast at it.
And Karsten Warholm is another superstar who runs the 400 metre hurdles. And they've decided that these two guys should go head to head over 100 metres at the Zurich Diamond League. So
he's a pole vaulter. Running 100 metres.
So good.
Yeah.
Right, should we do some questions?
Yeah, let's get some questions.
Olivia from London. Hi team. Love the pod and thank you for helping me get through my long runs. I'm running the Berlin Marathon at the end of September and wondered if you might help with a couple of questions. I have some new carbon-plated race day shoes and wondered ideally how many miles should I run in them before race day? Are there any specific running sessions to practice in race day shoes that will help? And secondly, I had my first sports massage the other day, which was so good but so painful. What do you think about sports massages when it comes to aiding recovery, and how often might you suggest getting one? Lots of love. So, I love a massage.
I don't think you'll have a sports massage, though, do you?
You'd start with that question.
Have you ever had a proper sports massage?
Well, what's the really tough one when they stand on the ropes above your head?
That's definitely not sports massage.
No?
I think
I like the scented oil. I often go for the coconut oil.
No, I don't think they bring
We need
that
to
up.
book Rick a proper sports massage for after his
like
half marathon.
deep tissue.
I've had a deep tissue, when they walk on the ropes on you.
No, not the same.
No? Okay, all right. Should we start with the carbon-plated race shoes?
Yeah, so I would say for this, well, I'll see if you agree, Andy. I would say minimum of 2 runs. Number 1, just go out for a short run. Maybe it's going to be like your recovery run for the week, just to check that you don't get any blisters, to check that they're okay, to check that your socks are right in the shoe, to check that you've tied them up properly. Yeah. Then, again, practice for race day. Yeah. Whatever kind of long run you're doing, if it's a paced long run, I would use them for that. Yeah,
I think that, bear in mind, some people will find slow recovery jog paces uncomfortable in carbon plated shoes, and it depends on the shoe as to how versatile they are. Some of them only feel good at like slightly faster paces. Yeah. So I'd actually throw them in at, the first time I'd test them would be in some strides at the end of a run. So swap out of your shoes, put the strides on, and then you can get that benefit that you're talking about for sure. And then wear them for a full interval session. So the faster paced stuff that you do. And then, I wanted to wear mine for at least one or part of my actual long runs. Yeah.
Part of? So you literally bring a backpack and switch
Andy's
them out halfway?
Andy's a serial shoe swapper.
I will swap shoes, but no, I did.
In the middle of a run?
I have done that in the past, but no, actually I didn't.
What?
Because if I wanted to do a faster section of a run, then I might want to change.
So
shoes.
he'll warm up, then he'll swap. This is what I mean.
No, he said in the middle of a run.
Yeah.
This is less usual, but I'd never done a marathon before. And so I was worried that like maybe I was going to have a bad reaction from these carbon plated shoes. So I might do if I was doing a 30k run, I might have done like 10 or 15k laps and then come back and change.
Carry something.
No, I wouldn't.
No, he wouldn't carry it. Come on, it's Andy.
I'm like you. I wouldn't carry a GoPro.
He's never worn a hydration vest in his life.
No, I have not. But no, I would certainly like trying to do a 20k plus running them if you're going to run a marathon.
All right.
I can't remember what she's.
Yeah,
she's doing Berlin Marathon.
So do a 20k in your carbon plated shoes before the marathon.
Yeah.
So you're doing a full long run before race day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sports massage.
This one is really individual. I know people who've had a massage like the day before a race, but if you're not used to it, that could actually have a really bad detrimental effect. You could just feel, for some people, it can make you feel really kind of sluggish and tired. But for other people, it's exactly what they need to kind of pep them up and help them to go. So
I just love a massage.
You don't know that until you experience it. But I definitely wouldn't have them more than every like couple of weeks if you're going to have them regularly.
Might be worth, if you've got one done or if you're doing it in like a deload week for a marathon, just asking the person who you go to see, because they might be like, oh, actually this is a bit tight, so after your long run come back. Or they might be like, they can give the best advice.
The most important thing about any recovery aid or anything like that is how it makes you feel. Yeah. So if it makes you feel good, then that's a positive.
Oh, it makes me feel good. If you go 8 times to my parlour, you get a stamp on every one. You get your 8th free.
Your parlour.
Yeah.
Well, on that happy note, what I would really like is for people to send in what your mottos are, because I still don't think I found the perfect one for a race.
I like work hard,
I do like it. I just feel like it's always under construction. So if you have a good motto that you've used in a race, or actually a second call out, I would like us at some point this year to do a TRC meets or just a kind of podcast special with a sports psychologist.
Yes.
So if anyone listening to this has ever worked with one, or if you are one, get in touch, podcast@therunningchannel.com, and we will look to do a future episode on running and your mind and how to stop the wobble at kilometre 20 in a half marathon. That's a bit specific to me.
Oh, but I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time.
Bye.